Okay, so today's lesson is wet medium, the introduction of pen and ink. Okay, pen and ink is a very, very precise method of drawing. It's a wet medium. It requires a hard paper, like a Bristol. The newsprint will not work, so the hard paper meaning it's substantial. It has a little thickness to it, has a little plate finish to it, and it has to sort of stand up to the rigors of a very sharp pen point, okay, and it being wet, okay, and so you will need an inkwell. Okay, you'll need the India ink. This is a great brand, Higgins Black India ink. It's a drawing ink. Okay, and it's good to have an area like a plate like this to keep the ink contained, so to speak, because it always has the potential of spilling, right? And so we are going to work towards drawing a little simple still life, but prior to doing that, we're going to do an exercise that we did with charcoal, but we're going to do with the pen and ink, and the approach is the same. It's how to develop a value. And so we're going to do a gradient value study here, right? So you need a hard piece of paper. You need a smaller piece of paper than the newsprint because pen and ink requires a tremendous amount of work and time to develop values. Okay, so your work area is going to be smaller. Okay. Now the pen tip comes in many different forms, right? This particular one is really the best. It's very durable. Some of them are quite delicate, which I don't like. I like to use this durable one and a handle. Okay, and you always want to have a little paper towel. The pen tip, as you see, has like a split in it, a caliper where the ink comes down. So basically the action is that you're kind of laying down the ink on the paper, okay? And so the tip has to always be clean. You can wash it to refresh it if it gets clogged and so forth. And see, there's like a concave and convex side to it. So typically drawing with the pen, the concave part is face down. Okay. All right. So let's try to rule out, okay, two lines. Okay. We're going to draw our gradient. And so ruling out lines in itself is a bit of a skill. So I'm going to keep it in an angle away from putting the pen tip in there. The ink would get sucked under the ruler and you would get some blotching. So I want to create two parallel lines nicely. Okay. About 1.5 inches apart from each other, like that, right? And we're going to create a gradient, right, from 0 to 10, 10 being black, right? And as you remember from developing the gradient using the charcoal, the line work and the strategy is the same. Right? It's just that you're using a pen and ink, right? So you want to just glide that tip on the paper, and you'll be going back and forth to the well many times. So here's my first, set of lines, right? Nice and consistent, going to 10, right? And I'm careful to pick up just enough ink, not too much, Okay, so it doesn't blotch or drip. Okay, so this is the second. And the strategy is the same. Now I'm going to back away. Right, and as you can see, the tool is extremely precise. I'm going to back away again. Right? Change my angles. Okay, always moving away from my original. Not changing my angles enough here, so gotta be careful. If you go in the same direction, you can't get even distribution. And I'm always backing away from the original, from the left side. Right, backing away consistently. And relying on my strategy of developing the values. Backing away. Backing away. And as you can see, where I've been going over the same spot, the paper's getting wet and I'm getting a little clogging there. So you want to pull away any of the paper lint, clean up your tip a little bit, okay, and continue. backing away. I'm gonna back away again. I'm kind of aiming to, whoa. Right, until I get black, black all the way at the end. Okay. Well, there you go. And you have a fairly smooth gradient, right? So you want to practice that 2 or 3 times, right? So the first thing you do is you clean off your tip a little bit. Make sure it's good. Okay. Again, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to rule 2 lines. 1, right? And another one just below. Okay. Like that. Okay, and I'm going to wipe off the ruler because it gets a little ink on it. Okay, again, so we're going from 0 to 10. Right? Always keeping the tip nice and clean. Okay, so here we go once again. And if your ink is not the right type of ink, it's going to clog the tip. It's not going to draw well. So it's a bit of a, you know, there's a knack to it. Okay, here we go. I'm going to employ my strategy. I'm going to back up, right? So a little further back. And you have to keep your wrist raised off the paper, off the drawing, so as not to smudge the lines. Okay, accidents do happen, okay, and that's just the nature of the beast. Again, backing away. And consistently putting down the lines. Okay, notice how my wrist is doing the work here. It's not kind of in charcoal, it's more your arm doing it. Here it's your wrist. And there's a rhythm that you want to get into, okay? And so when I'm backing off, changing my angle. Keeping a consistent line work, a rhythm. I'm trying to improve on my last attempt. Okay. Keeping more track of where I've been. And this technique is called crosshatching, right? We're crosshatching the value into your drawing. Okay, and I'm going to back off again. Okay. Backing off again. Backing off again. And you got to kind of aim for the holes a little bit. Okay. Backing off again. And this strategy supports our whole idea that you're always working from light to dark to be able to control your values, okay? And that's really the balance of values. Once your drawing is designed properly, the balance of values is of utmost importance, right? See, now it got very wet over there, so they picked up a little of that lint on that. You want to keep your calipers nice and open. Okay. And we've achieved our black. Beautiful, nice, soft gradient, right? You can see the difference. This one's a little bit more opened up, okay? And so again, wet medium, see what that sharp tip does to the paper? It starts to eat at the paper. So you want to keep your tip nice and clean, okay? And the India ink is washed off with water. So let's try this again, right? So, and the maintenance. One of the things is that you might want to tape down onto your drawing board to steady the piece of paper as you're working. It's just a little easier at times. Sometimes when you're doing the actual rendering, you like to be able to turn the page. So, but in this particular case, since the assignment is fairly linear, it's easier to have the piece of paper taped down, right? So again, let's try this once more, right? So I'm gonna rule, and notice the angle. I'm keeping the pen tip away from the ruler itself, right? You don't want to go in there because the ink will get sucked in underneath the ruler, right? So here we go. Inking the rule. Nice and parallel, nice and straight. Okay, there we go. We want to wipe off the ruler, right? And try this again. So 0 to 10, right? Here we go. Nice and consistent. Okay, and our strategy is we're going to back away. We're going to be disciplined about that, backing away. Notice the rhythm, the pulsation of the, as I'm laying down, you got to get used to that. This is called crosshatching, right? I'm backing away. And I'm looking always to improve my technique, so a little more consistent this time. And changing the angle is key. If you go in the same direction, the drawing clogs up. Nice. Right, so I'm here, now I'm right here. Right, so I'm gonna back off a little more. All right, trying to keep it consistent. Okay. Over here. See, the paper starts to buckle as it gets wetter and wetter. This is called cross-hatching. You can see why, very descriptive. Changing my angles ever so slightly. Trusting my technique, just backing off consistently. And you can see how it's really clogging up here. Okay. And I've got lint on my ink pen, right? Want to make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, it's good to run it underwater. So here you go. That's what you need to do. You need to practice that several times, okay? So that's the gradient, 0 through 10, how to crosshatch and develop values, okay? Pen and ink, wet medium. So the one thing I wanted to show you is that the pen and ink, it's a wet medium, right? And so you have this reservoir of ink, and the ink sits underneath in that concave area, right? And so you want to make sure that you don't overload the pen tip. Overloading meaning having too much ink on it where it'll drip. Like if I have too much ink on it, see how it'll splat, right? So you want to just make sure that every time you go in to get ink from your reservoir, that you kind of glide the tip along the edge of the opening of the inkwell, so that you take off any excess amount of ink, right? And you should experiment with the different types of lines and directions. You can't go in this direction because it kind of cuts into the paper. And you have to apply just the pen should be just gliding along the surface of the paper, right? And you can create curved lines, all kinds of lines. And notice that the medium it's very slow in its development of value, right? So it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, right? But it's extremely precise, very, very, very precise in its nature. Okay, so experiment a little bit by trying different types of lines, right? It can be very spontaneous, expressive, very deep medium, right? So the point here is that don't overload your ink because you're going to get dripping and so forth, okay? And always keeping the tip clean.